Hello, class, and welcome to week 2. I'm very much looking forward to reading over your otherness journals, your case about Jeanette, and watching your discussion videos. So, as we look into week 2, I wanted to explain the method to my madness, and I forgot to do this last week. Because I was an undergrad English major, I love quotes, I love reading, I love something that sort of speaks to what we're going to be doing in the week. And this week our quote comes from Brian Greene. He's a physicist. I like to say that he writes books for dummies. And so he really explains the universe and very deep concepts in ways that people like me can understand who have like no mathematical brain. But Brian's quote this week is very good. Dr. Green, excuse me. It's the boldness of asking deep questions requires unforeseen flexibility if we're going to accept the answers. And it's the old adage, don't ask a question if you don't want to know the answer. This applies to us internally. As counselors, one of the hardest things that it takes to be a professional counselor is courage. The internal courage that it takes to be honest with yourself, especially when you're sitting across from someone and something is rubbing up against you in a way that you feel uncomfortable. Technically, right, when we're sitting across from someone, it shouldn't matter what they do or say because it's not us. We're an objective outside party. And yet, we know that's not the case. I mean, someone can walk in the room and right away, you're having a very strong reaction to this person because they might look like your ex or because they walk like your mother, etc. And so being aware of your own experiences and having the courage to admit it, that's like the biggest part of being a successful professional counselor. So, to that end, this week we're going to be looking at our own biases. So we're going to take that internal investigation about our own biases. So related to that, you have to read Chapter 7. I'll have to tell you, Chapter 7 contains a seminal article in multicultural/diversity counseling literature by Peggy McIntosh. She wrote this in the 1980s, so it's been around for quite some time. And without fail, it always gets a strong response from students. I remember when I was a master's student and I had to read this article, and I had a very strong response, almost a visceral response to reading it. And so if you're reading this article and you find yourself having a response, please recognize and know that that's normal. Most students do. But what I challenge you to do this week is go a little bit deeper. Why am I having this response? What is this rubbing up against in me? And do I have a hard time really reading what she says, thinking about what she says, and seeing if this could be the truth based on her perspective? And so I challenge you to do that. So oftentimes when we think about biases, we have our big ones like race, gender, ethnicity, ableism, age. And so, as a counselor in training, you think, well, I will be neutral, I will be non-judgmental, I will accept everyone who walks through my door. And yes, there will be clients who walk in and they are visibly different from you. And so right away, I'm going to put on my multicultural hat, I will not show judgment to this person, etc. But sometimes your biases can creep up in very different ways. For example, I was working with this client, and she had lost custody of her daughter. And so part of our approach was to help her to reunify with her family. And around about session 5 or 6, she discloses to me that she's engaged in this like steamy and sexy affair. And I'm in session, and literally on the inside, I feel myself like vibrating. And I was very upset with her in a way that I knew I shouldn't be, but I also was unafraid to share that with my supervisor. Because I had such a reaction to her, I needed to examine it. I needed to, number one, understand that this is not normal for me to have this reaction for a client, but also understand that I had to process it with someone. So again, having that courage to do that. And what I discovered was my bias, the should that I had around a mother and her daughter, was that a mother should want to reunify with her daughter. A mother should put her needs aside to be with her daughter. And that's not always the case. And that's my value. That's my bias. And so sometimes your biases can be right away. You can see them. You can see someone who's different from you or who engages in behaviors that are different from yours. But sometimes it's after you get to know the client or a few sessions in that they disclose something and you recognize or you realize, oh, I didn't know I had an issue with that. So having the courage to accept that, having the courage, well, not to accept, but to acknowledge that, and having the courage to look at it, examine it, question it, see if it's the truth, etc., that's what it takes to be a successful professional counselor. So that's my talk about biases this week. The other talk I'll have is about stories. So one of the things I like about this course is that, we think about our otherness, and then we begin to think about the otherness of other people. And recognizing that everyone has a story, I think, is extremely important. And as counselors in training, it's being flexible, it's being willing to be a student of the client's world. And so anytime I think I have all the answers, I throw it out the door because the client knows themselves very well. And what I'm here to do is learn from them, how they see the world, how they experience the world. And also, I want to be able to, as the counselor, help this individual to recognize and realize that they have all the internal tools inside to be able to meet the world and the demands of the world. So this is again why it's important for us to have courage, because we are the vehicle, we are the conduit, and as such, we need to be clear and we need to be sure that whatever is our stuff stays our stuff and is not projected onto the client. So, go forth, do good work this week. Let me know if you have any questions about this very long announcement, and I will see you all soon. Thanks.